Welcome to Left, Right, Center, where we are covering Colorado politics first on CBS News Colorado. I'm political specialist Sean Boyd with our analyst, Democrat Mike Dino, Republican Dick Wadhams. Two new polls in Colorado's U.S. Senate and gubernatorial races give very different pictures on where the races stand. A poll by the University of Colorado found Democratic U.S. Senator Michael Bennet has a 14-point lead over his Republican challenger, Joe Day. Compare that to a poll by Trafalgar Group, which shows Bennet up by just 2 points. And in the gubernatorial race, Democratic incumbent Governor Jared Polis has a 16-point lead over his Republican challenger Heidi Ganahl in the CU poll, while the Trafalgar poll has him up by 7 points. Dick, the Wall Street Journal also did a survey showing that white suburban women who outvote men, we know, in Colorado now favor Republicans by 15 points. It's a 27-point shift from August. So that's enormous. What do you make of the difference in these polls here?
Well, I think the Democrats have way overestimated the impact of the abortion decision this past summer. And it's all abortion all the time, as usual, from Democrats. And I think suburban women, more than any other demographic group perhaps, they're concerned about crime, they're concerned about inflation, they're concerned just across the board of these economic problems we've got. And I think that it's clear they've shifted. And we have a lot of suburban women in Colorado. That's why I think Trafalgar is much closer to where the race is than CU. I think they only tested in Boulder County, I think, is what they did. But no, I think these races are much closer, especially the Senate race. And frankly, I think there's a possibility of an upset next week. I really do.
Mike, the 74% of women in this Wall Street Journal poll said economy #1 issue for them. Do you think that abortion has faded in terms of the importance at this point? What do you make of this discrepancy in the polls?
Well, when you run a campaign, you do rely on good timing and good luck. And the Democrats were looking good right after the Roe versus Wade decision. And they were able to capitalize on that. We did see more women register. We certainly saw a situation in Kansas this summer where it was on the ballot and overwhelmingly was defeated in terms of restricting abortion more. So there's timing there. I do think the Democrats maybe have missed some opportunity to talk about the good things in the economy. We see, again, the jobs report is up again today. It was even corrected or adjusted last month, even up more. The deficit has been cut in half from 2.8 to 1.4 trillion. Childhood poverty is at its lowest in 80 years. And so there's a lot of positive things on the economy, but when people go to the store and eggs are twice as much as what they're paying for them, that's what they may go to the ballot box with, and the Democrats have to contend with that.
Mike should be running these campaigns.
Listen, I would throw in 100% with that.
So still, the polls show Governor Polis up by huge amounts, whichever poll you look at. So if it is the landslide that the polls are indicating, do you see that trickling down ballot too?
No. I don't think Dick is better at this than me in terms of what he remembers. My stuff goes in one part of my head and out the other pretty quickly. But I haven't seen anybody carry anything down ballot for a long time in this state. I think Governor Polis wins by double digits. It may be 10%. I think Bennet, anything that shows him winning by double digits is not right. He will win between 4 and 6%. And that's something that I think I've consistently said when we've talked about this. So I'm not like Dick. I don't think we'll see any surprises on election night.
What is your prediction?
Well, let's start here, Sean. Remember, we've elected a bunch of Democratic governors over the last 50 years, only elected one Republican. But during that time, we were electing Republican secretaries of state, Republican attorneys general, Republican treasurers. I think we could return to that in 2022. If O'Day is running close or actually beating Bennet, and Polis is under 10%, I could see a Pam Anderson, a Lang Sias, and a John Kilner winning those other races. I really could, because I think voters are kind of in a split vote, divided vote mentality right now. And so I think there could be a lot of interesting dynamics on election night.
We go back to the way Colorado was, the split ticket voting and not the straight ticket voting. Well, in the latest report, 25% of active registered Colorado voters had turned in their ballots. Nearly 26,000 more women than men have voted, and 37% of those who've turned in ballots are unaffiliated, compared to 30% Republican and 33% Democrat. Mike, what is typical midterm election turnout?
Well, I always key off at 25%. I mean, I don't expect more than that, but that looks like where we'll be. It doesn't seem to be higher than maybe 4 years ago at this yet. And I think voters know, and people who watch know, that we're never as high as the presidential election years. And so, you know, I think getting, you know, if we're at 25% right now, in my view, that's pretty good. I do think it continues to show that unaffiliated voters continue to play a bigger role in these elections. We saw it in the primaries. We've talked about that. And again, that's going to be a big deal as it relates to this election. Will O'Day, you know, to Dick's point, if there is an upset, which I don't think there will be, but if there is, it's because the unaffiliated voters that went with him in the primary stuck with him all the way to Election Day on November 8th.
Like they did with Hickenlooper.
Exactly.
Right. Dick, Republican turnout is down right now from where it was in the last midterm. Do you think Republicans are not, I mean, they were expected to be so enthused this election, you know, it's a midterm, Democrats in power, or do you think they're waiting to vote on Election Day?
I frankly think they're waiting, Sean. I don't know why this has taken hold in Republican circles, but, well, a lot of it has to do with Donald Trump. Republicans who are concerned about our electoral process have decided that we got to wait until Election Day or slightly before, because that way they can't steal our ballot.
Switch the vote, right?
It's kind of crazy to me, but I do think a lot of Republicans buy off that voting late is good. The other thing about the stats right now, Democrats have a 120,000 lead over Republicans in terms of raw registration. They only have a 38,000 lead in terms of who's voted so far, and which I find interesting. So if there is a Republican surge at the end, that's why I look at all these numbers and I just think it is ripe for an upset.
Well, don't forget young people. There's a big prediction they'll turn out and they vote late too.
Okay, all right.
We shall see. When we come back, why some Colorado County clerks have installed bulletproof glass in their offices. Welcome back to Left, Right, Center. In another sign of just how vicious the political climate is, some county clerks in Colorado are receiving death threats from election deniers. A few have even installed bulletproof glass in their offices. I spoke to the clerks in Weld and El Paso counties this week. Both are Republicans and are among the top targets.
But for the last 2 years, it's been nonstop innuendos, threats, at all levels.
El Paso County Clerk Chuck Borman is one of the last people you would expect Republicans to turn on. Former county chair and state party vice chair, he's been a staunch party chieftain for decades. Now he's enemy number one of election deniers.
We've had threats where, you know, there'll be blood on your hands, or you better watch out.
It's not just attacking the integrity of elections. Now it's actually attacking us, people who are administrating the elections.
Weld County Clerk Carly Koppas, also a top target of conspiracy theorists. Have you been worried about your safety at any point during this?
There's been some moments where I've had some conversations with my family and my better half.
Death threats?
They've been few, yes.
Both clerks have been under attack since the 2020 election ended. They've had to beef up security, adding cameras in their offices. Borman even installed them at all 37 drop boxes.
So far, we've viewed 2,300 hours of video, have seen nothing that suggests that there are mules or anyone not doing something that's inappropriate. We've put in additional layers of transparency and audits in place. We've held town halls, meetings, met with people one-on-one, phone calls. We went the whole 9 yards for folks to try and instill confidence in our voters.
Still, he says election judges are being followed and harassed. In Weld, election deniers threatened to camp out at ballot boxes 24/7. Koppas warned them they'd be arrested. She says she's constantly on guard, waiting for the next conspiracy theory to materialize.
And it really has been 7 days a week because social media doesn't stop.
She has just 7 full-time staff, Berman 10, but they have hundreds of volunteers. And Kappas says she has more watchers this election than ever before. Both clerks hoping voters are watching and witnessing transparent, fair, secure elections. For Berman, it will be the last he oversees. He's running for county treasurer and says he may pay a political price.
I got to be able to look in the mirror every morning and look at that person in the mirror and know that I did the right thing. So if it is the end of my political career, so be it.
Just remind myself that I'm here to do my job to the best of my ability, and I'm going to do that every single day that I come into work, and they're not going to deter me from that.
You know, Dick, I just wonder if this ever ends and how many candidates are going to be asking for recounts after this election, right?
Makes me sick to my stomach, Sean. I know Carly and Chuck very well. They are the best. They're good people. They're professional. They run their offices in such a professional way. And this is just disgusting, but it's going on all over, and I know it is across the country. Right. And it is the result of this paranoia that has been fed, frankly, by a former Republican president, that the election process is compromised and phony. And I'm just sick of it. And I'm glad you did this story so that people could see the impact of this stuff going on. I really am.
Right. It even follows them home. You know, Carly Kappas, the Weld County clerk, talked about having a record number of watchers this election. Mm-hmm. She's an equal number, Republicans and Democrats. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm stating the obvious, and neither party trusts each other.
Right.
So they definitely want to watch what the other's doing. I think the longer-term challenges we see in other states, and not to the degree here, is that people are running for Secretary of State offices that are election deniers that will get elected, maybe in Arizona, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. And those will be key states in the presidential election. And then we're going to have a Supreme Court hearing possibly that may devolve the election results to state legislatures deciding what they'll send to Washington when the votes are certified. And so a lot of things to come on this.
Yeah, when you think it can't get any worse. You know, there's a poll out today, Washington Post said 88% of Americans are now worried about politically motivated violence. Do you believe that's where we're at?
That's where we're at. I hope it changes.
Maybe we'll follow Brazil, where it actually looks like it turned out peaceful there in that presidential.
That's true. That's true.
Well, this week, Colorado lost a true statesman. State Minority Leader Hugh McKean died of a heart attack. He was just 55 years old. I, like so many others, will truly miss him. He was a rarity in politics. Warm, friendly, kind. Not just to Republicans, but Democrats, too. He reached across the aisle, angering some of those in his own party at times. He was a good person and someone who brought out the best in those around him. You know, Dick, we just talked about the stress that the clerks are under, but I can't help but wonder if stress played in to Hugh's death as well.
No doubt. He was under assault from people within my own party because he wasn't strident enough as the leader. What I liked about Hugh, Sean, is that he picked his fights carefully, and he picked good fights. And
he wasn't mean about them. He wasn't personal about them.
That's right. That's right. No, he was a good man. We're going to miss him.
And so are we going to be able to get good people to go into politics anymore? That's what this raises for me. Yeah.
Well, for instance, Colin Larson will probably be the new minority leader. He's my state rep in South Jeffco. He's really a good guy in the tradition of Hugh McKean. So I think that's encouraging. So. Mike,
House Republicans' assistant minority leader resigned last year. Now we've got McKean gone, so they've got 2 vacancies there. Democrats also, their 2 top leadership positions are vacant at this point. So how do you see this playing out down there in terms of who becomes leadership? Are we going to see the moderates, or are we going to see the more extremes of the party?
Well, certainly on the Democratic side, I do think there's some concern that, you know, the more left part of the party will drive the agenda. I'm not so sure that'll be the case. I think, you know, speaking more on the Republican side, I think the Republicans have a lot positive to look at. They put one of the best slates up they could for this election. It didn't have the extremists in it. I think that's a huge message to the extremists that they're not in charge. And I think if Dick's right about where the leadership will go over in the House, that'll continue that path forward, and that's the best thing for the Republican Party. And on the Democratic side, with a state that appears, I think, to have blue results. They'll continue to have leadership discussions, but by and large, I think they'll put the right people where they need to be.
All right. When we come back, some big-name politicos come out in opposition to magic mushrooms. Welcome back to Left, Right, Center. The Democratic candidate running for Colorado's Congressional District 8 is demanding that an ad by her Republican opponent be pulled from the air. The ad by State Senator Barb Kirkmeyer says Representative Yadira Caraveo and Democrats in the state legislature legalized fentanyl possession. They actually made it a misdemeanor, and then, when so many people died, raised it back to a felony for certain amounts. Now, Mike, whether Caraveo is able to get this ad pulled or not, it seems like a lot of people in this district have already made up their minds. You know, a major election prognosticator just moved this from a toss-up to lean Republican. What's going on there?
Well, a lot of money, outside money's come into this race, too. You know, the Democratic candidate, Dr. Yadira Caraveo, has a great resume. And I think some people who watch the race think that she could be a little more aggressive in terms of her campaign style. Dick and I were talking about the district's almost 40% Latino voters. Right. It would be something to see actually 40% of the vote be Latinos. That will be a challenge. I think if you're not as aggressive a campaigner as you possibly could be to get certain demographics to turn out, it can be challenging. And I think for her, no matter what the issue is, the numbers just may not add up.
You know, Dick, I aired profile pieces this last week on both of the candidates, and one of the things that surprised me when I interviewed Kirkmeyer is that she supports the bill in Congress that would only ban abortion after 15 weeks, and she's pretty anti-abortion. Does that hurt her? Does it matter? Is abortion not as important in this election, especially in a district like that?
I don't think it's as important as it was a few months ago. And frankly, I think Barb is already seen as a very strong pro-life person, but she's also pragmatic. She understands what really would actually get passed and get approved. I think that's what makes her a very effective legislator, and she'll be a very effective member of Congress. But and by the way, I don't think they should have said legalized in that ad. But on the other hand, that was the de facto impact of knocking it down to a misdemeanor, because people who. And they weren't getting prosecuted even if they were arrested on that. Even though it was technically wrong, that was ultimately the impact of it. So.
And you know, in this district, just like in any other district, it's the economy that matters. You know, economy is top issue. You have a lot of Latinos who are small business owners and are concerned. So.
And oil and gas workers too.
Right. Yeah. Colorado could become only the second state in the country to decriminalize psychedelic mushrooms next week. Blue Rising Together, a nonprofit opposing the measure, released a letter this week urging a no vote. The letter is signed by the Attorney General, former Governor Bill Owens, mayors of the 3 largest cities, and a bipartisan group of district attorneys, state lawmakers, and city council members. Among their concerns, that mushrooms are not FDA approved, local governments can't opt out of mushroom facilities, there's no buffers around schools, and while the measure doesn't allow the sale of mushrooms, it allows them to be gifted for a suggested donation, with just a $250 penalty for gifting to a kid. But supporters of the measure say mushrooms have shown such promise in treating PTSD that the FDA has labeled them a breakthrough therapy, which fast-tracks research.
There are people who are suffering today who don't necessarily have access to these medicines, who deserve access to them, who deserve that choice.
If there is medicinal purposes, let's let science determine that. Let's do trials, let's do research.
The ballot measure is funded by several out-of-state corporations. Mike, you know, there is some concern that they're going to come in and they're going to set up these mushroom retreats around Colorado. Certainly, I don't think anybody saw where marijuana was going to go when we approved that. And I think there's some same concern with mushrooms here, too.
Definitely. But the thing is, when you have $4 million on the pro side, will that will that be overshadowed by what other people are saying? And as we saw with marijuana, there was a lot of money supporting it, and it was passed.
Right.
I didn't want marijuana to be legalized, and I don't want this to be legalized. I do think an exception should be made for people who could benefit medically, but not this.
Yeah. Well, this is one we will be watching.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching Left, Right, Center. Tuesday is Election Day. Don't forget to vote.